Sexual abuse is something that nobody wants to talk about. Sex is not a topic a mother wants to talk about with her child, her daughter. Neither does a father want to talk about it with his son. But today, so many children are being sexually abused and their parents don't even know about it. I have a guest who was sexually abused as a child. And today, he has turned his heart into a halo. And today, he's using it to heal other people. I stumbled on his column one of those days I bought one of the newspapers. And ever since then, have been following and reading his column weekly. And I called him to come and share his story. What led him into counseling people on sexual abuse? Is your child being sexually abused? Would you like to know the signs to look out for so that it will help you understand why your child is behaving in a certain way? Well, don't miss this program. Hello, you're welcome. I have with me here Praise Fowowe. And like I told you in the introduction, I read his column in one of the papers and I really wanted to know what transpired. That today he's healing other people. Mr. Praise, you're welcome.
It's my pleasure.
I read your column in the papers. And I read it the first time, and I read it the second time. And the third time I said, I'd like to speak with this person so that he'll come here and tell his story and how God led him into doing this. Thank you for taking my call, and thank you for being here.
It's always a pleasure being here.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So, what led you into the column you write?
Okay, it's such a long story that started.
I have all the time.
It was a story that started when I was 4.
Okay.
Of course, I didn't remember that part of the story until later. You know, after I started going through my healing process, I just discovered that I became sexually active quite early. I discovered I lost control of my sexuality as a teenager. You know, it was later I discovered I had something to do with what happened when I was growing up. I was a victim of child sexual abuse. You know, there were people living in the house, and we had aunties, you know, elderly women, and they would touch you, you know, touch your genitals and ask you not to tell your parents, you know. So that was happening for a long time. But all I knew was that when I was between preteen and my teenage years, I wanted to be around ladies, you know. So I had lots of girls around me. I had some of them as girlfriends, and most of them were older than me. You know, then before I knew it, started getting into sex, and you know, it continued. I wanted sex every now and then, you know, and after some time, I became what we now call a sex addict. You know, I wanted to do sex every day. I could literally look for just any girl anywhere at any point in time. You know, I could turn whatever. If I couldn't find a girl, I could turn whatever to look like a vagina that must be penetrated. You know, as in I was going out of touch, out of control. But surprisingly, nobody knew. You know, because
I mean, even your parents.
No, nobody knew what was happening. You know, I was very active in church. I was an instrumentalist. I could play on instruments. You know, so nobody knew I was going through stuff. So it continued like that all through my. And because I was quite brilliant, you know, in the secondary school.
It didn't affect your academics.
It affected to an extent, but you see, when you are still doing well, of course, if you're supposed to be having A1 in your result and you're still having A2, people will still feel you're okay, but I knew it affected me, you know. But I had a plan for my life. I knew when I wanted to get in university, you know, so I'd started writing, you know, SSC way before my mates. So when my mates were writing final exam, I was already, you know, admitted into university, you know. So I knew I was going to be in trouble getting to the university because it would be my first time of, leaving my parents. And I remembered that when I was going to school, apparently my mother had noticed, that there were lots of ladies around me, but she couldn't really put her hands.
What was
She was
going
quite
on?
sensitive, but I remember when I was going to school, she was crying and she handed me a Bible. And she told me that I know that normally you don't run after girls, they run after you, but be very careful, just go to church, be a good boy. And, I took a message, but when I got to school, I literally
Through the Bible one time.
for God. And for me, I was so happy that, man, I had a room to myself. I was going to really have a nice time. So from day one, I started looking for girls. But surprisingly, all through, my stay in the university, I got in 1995, I couldn't have sex with any girl. Just I wasn't born again, but at the point it would happen, something would happen, and I couldn't, do it. And so I started hearing people talk about get born again, do this. Of course, I was familiar because I grew up from the Christian home. My father, was an Anglican priest, so I knew all those things, but I couldn't really understand what they were talking about. But I particularly had one that said to me, okay, if you give your life to Christ, all your problems, would be over, because I knew I had sex problem, but I didn't know who to talk to. So every Sunday while on campus, I'll go from one fellowship to the other, hoping I'll get someone to at least come and share a testimony of how, he was hooked on masturbation and sex addiction and how God delivered. But I never got to hear anything. Everything I had was God blessed me, God promoted me, God did this, God did that. So I felt I was the only sinner, So something just told me, okay, pray, start pretending. So I perfected all the church passwords. Passwords like bless you, it is well, God is in control, So I started all those cliches. I started using them, and so
The underlying problem was still there.
everybody thought I was fine, Then 1996, I went for an altar call, but my problem was still there. But the difference between being an unbeliever and a believer was the fact that as an unbeliever, I could sleep around and talk to my friends about it, but as a believer, you couldn't talk to anybody, so I started pretending, about it, and it went on. And I remember there was a day, I got so tired, I went to meet a pastor, and he said it was because I wasn't fasting enough, that I should go and fast, that fasting will cure my sex problem. So I went fasting.
How long did you fast?
I kept fasting. He just gave me some days to fast. And I kept fasting. And he asked me to break at 6 o'clock. And when it was close to the time I was supposed to break the fast, a girl came into the room, one of my ex-girlfriends. I didn't know where she came from, but that was the end of the fast. That was when I knew I was in trouble. So I kept going to fellowship. I became a cell leader. I joined a choir. I started leading praise worship. There were days that I had to lead praise and worship. And Sunday morning, they would just inform me, praise, you're leading, and I would have to go, and because, I had the fear of God in me, but I couldn't, I would go and say, God, standing on this altar, I don't want you to destroy me because I knew what happened yesterday, and I would just cry, creating me a new heart, cast me not away from your presence. And, there were days on campus that I would go secretly to the chapel, and I would remove all my clothes, I would go nude, and I would hold the pennies and say, God, kill this thing is going to destroy me. And God never responded to those prayers, And 1998, they were going to bring in new leaders into my fellowship at school. I was in Christian Union and IFS, University of Ado-Ekiti, and I knew I was going to become the music director. But there was a problem. There were 82 sisters in that music department, and when I was announced, for the first time in my life, I knew how to take personal responsibility. So before I was announced, I decided to go on a fast and ask God for solutions. So I started fasting on the 18th day, I remember. After 18 days of fasting, I was just flipping through the scriptures and I had a voice. Up until that time, I never knew how to hear God. I had a voice. Go to your fellowship, share your sextimony. That was the word I heard.
Yes.
Immediately, I knew that wasn't an English word. So I asked, what is a sextimony?
Yes.
And I had, a sextimony is a testimony of your sex life. And immediately I said, I don't have any. I mean, everything was messy. And I said, so go and tell them what you've been doing. So I think up until that time, one thing about me, even up to now, I have there are believers who, when God speaks, they pretend not to have heard God. I don't know.
Especially if it's not what they want.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that until I obey God. I mean, I would not rest. So I went out of the house. So it was a fellowship day like that. There was someone coordinating. There were a couple of people there. And the person was the outgoing music director. and he just asked people to share stuff that they had to go through. So I didn't go out because I was asking the Holy Spirit, if I went out, number one, they wouldn't make me a leader again because my fellowship was very strict. Number two, Campus Magazine was going to pick the story and it would be a major scandal. And the Lord asked me a simple question to answer the first question I posed to him, that would you rather forget about leadership now, forgo leadership now so that you can lead in the future? Okay, I said I prefer the future. Then number two, he said, okay, Campus Watch's last story. He said, have you forgotten what your mother used to tell you, that the sweetest song in the world, if you sing it consistently for 3 months, you'll pick another song? I said, yes. I said, so let them splash it. When they talk about you for 3 months, they'll pick someone else's story. So I was prepared. So that day, I reluctantly, I wasn't going to go forward. Then they said, there's still someone here. You have something to say. So I reluctantly went forward and I started sharing my struggles. I must have gone on for like 20 minutes thereabout. But after 5 minutes, loads of people were already crying. I mean, there were people on their knees somewhere in the frame. I didn't know that there were loads of people going through the same issue, not knowing who to talk to. So from that day, I mean, as I started sharing the story, I felt this weight, just
lifted.
Yeah. And that was when it occurred to me that, you see, the louder you talk, the freer you actually become. And I became light, I became free. Then that was the end, we prayed. But surprisingly, I was still made the music director. And Campus Watch didn't splash the story, they didn't even pick it. And from that day, people kept coming to me. I was in 300 level accounting department. Immediately I knew I wasn't going to practice, and I started announcing to all my mates that in fact I removed the sticker on my folder, I can with ICANN, and I said I wasn't going to write ICANN, that I was going to be helping people with sexual problems. And from that day, lots of people were recommending people, to me. So, I mean, every time they came to meet me, I sat with God, and God began to put me through. He began to teach me a lot of things that I never read, and I still think that's what is it's still with me right now. Before I ever read anybody's book on any subject, I'll first of all ask the Holy Spirit.
Hold that thought. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. I read a book that says if you have a purpose, your life can never be boring. And God will not put you through any situation that will not glorify Him, because He expects you to heal other people and comfort others with the same comfort you have been comforted. You're welcome back. So praise. What now happened? You were made the music director.
Yes.
And what turn did your life take?
I mean, it was amazing because, I mean, all the ladies I was afraid of, about 82 sisters, all of them knew the story. So they started coming to me. I mean, it was a turnaround. We've never had it that good in that fellowship, because they could talk to me about their struggles. They could talk to me about, several people. In fact, I started counseling people, loads of people. In fact, there were people I used
How was your appetite now for sex?
It had dropped. I mean, there was no appetite, I mean, to even start with. There were lots of people coming, people I used to respect, people I thought, there were people on campus that...
This was too pious and holy.
I mean, people that I respected their voice more than the voice of God.
Yes.
I didn't know they had issues, because lots of sisters started coming to me, and I started helping people. Then from that moment, I just knew, I wasn't going to practice as an accountant. People started inviting me from one fellowship to the other to share my story. All the message I knew to share was my story, and I kept sharing it from place to place, and that was how I left school. And then when I left school, I went to serve in Adamawa State. I had the option of either serving with CBN or a school. I chose a school because I wanted to affect the young. And the moment I got there, I discovered the sex problem, and I started helping, the young people. By the time I was leaving after my service here, they were crying, because lots of people, I mean,
they
had
confidence in you, they could talk.
Lots of people had been helped, just 3 students, who had gone through abortion, and the Lord kept telling me that with the comfort I've comforted thee, comfort other people. So everywhere I went, the first thing I will share with you my story. Every lady I met, the first question that I hope no guy is sleeping with this girl. How do you help? And that was it. And when I finished, when I got back to Lagos, I didn't want to work for anybody because I'd read lots of books. I thought it would be a waste of my time going to a bank. I got a bank job. I didn't even resume. I didn't go. And my dad was so angry. He was asking me, hey, what's wrong with you? And I said, Dad, I just want to do something with my life. Then one day I was walking the streets of Ajegunle, and I saw a brutal, I saw young people, young girls prostituting. I was able to put their age range at 14, between 14 and 16. I knew they were, the age range should be within that range. And I went back to my room and I started crying. God, what's government doing? Why can't you send someone to? And the Lord said to me, go back there the following day. And I said, how? I don't have money to rehabilitate. He said, go back there. So the following day, I disguised as a customer, went there, and I started talking to them. I didn't hold the Bible. I was using their names to talk to them because they had names like Glory, like Mary, so I would say things like, oh, Glory, what are you doing in this kind of place? And they started sharing their struggles, and I shared my own, addiction and struggles, and how God set me free, and they started living. One after the other, they were living. And the ones that couldn't leave, were asking, how do you help us? And the owner of the hotel, came to meet me, and it was like, you're spoiling business. We're going to kill you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Then I moved from that hotel, saw another place. It's called Good Evening Street, where the only thing that takes place there is prostitution. They had zones. They had Calabar zones, Benue zone, Akwa Ibom zone, and they don't mix. So I started talking to those ones. They were living as well, and I just discovered more people and they would go and invite their friends. Once I arrived a particular hotel, they would say, oh, our pastor don't come, our pastor don't come. They would gather, we would do fellowship together, hold hands. I was just doing my thing. And one day, Sonny Rabo heard about it. I was on NTN network service, and up till then, my dad was still asking me, aren't you going to work? Where are you going to get money? So I wanted to run away from home. So fortunately for me, one of the girls needed a place to stay. So I heard about Bimbo Dukoya, that she had a facility. So I went to Fountain of Life Church. And the moment she saw me, she just said to me, God told me you were coming. And that was how she asked me if I would like to work. Because I wanted to run away from home, I said, yes, I would work for you. I would work for free. That was how I started working, with Pastor Bimbo. I worked well for about 1.5, 2 years thereabout, and I was still helping loads of people. And then when it was my time to leave, I left and I went back to Ajegunle because I discovered that the more I took people out of brutals, the more others went to replace them. It was as if those ones were even waiting, So I had to change the approach to, okay, let's begin to prevent people from getting into prostitution, And every year I kept counting. When I did 1 year without sex, I was so excited. It was a Thanksgiving. I did 2 years, 3 years, 7 years, 8 years without sex. Because up until that time, when my friend had become born again, all of them were like, no, girls don't finish for war, they don't enter church. They didn't believe me because they knew. They knew I was like, they used to call me Don. I had the name Amma. That was the name they used to call me. They knew my. So I didn't do anything. I had peace with God. I had peace with myself. I discovered I was traveling for a star. Doors were flinging open like that, and so I kept at it. And the Lord began to teach me, what to teach people. He began to teach me. That was when I discovered that the most important sex organ we had was a mind, not a genital. So he began to teach me what sex was. Different definitions, redefinition for every reproductive part, and
hold that thought. Isn't God just great? Sometimes in life we think we are too far gone, but you know what? It's when you think you're too far gone, in that particular place where you believe you're too far gone, God is just there waiting for you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. When we started in the first episode, you told us that when you were being abused sexually as a child, that your parents didn't know.
Yeah.
What are the signs that mothers, people should watch out for in their children? Because we find out that people really don't like talking about sex.
Yeah.
Mothers who have daughters, especially unless, of course, they are bonding with their children, they can talk about it. But it's a topic that is a taboo.
Yeah.
How would a mother, a father, how would they identify the fact that their children, their daughters, their sons are being abused sexually? You're welcome back. How did you start writing for this day?
Okay. After the Lord had taught me, what to teach people, I started teaching people. I started a meeting in Ajegunle for young people every Sunday evening,
Yes.
And I would go there, talk. I didn't have money to print flyers, and So I was asking the Lord, so how do I gather people? And he said to me, Andrew principle. I didn't know what Andrew principle. He said, and Andrew found his own brother. He said, if it's two people, touch them, they will reach other people. And that was how everybody started coming, and the meeting grew to like 200, and every Sunday I would need to prepare. But I started, putting on my laptop, on my computer, then my desktop, everything I had to teach them. So one day I went with one of my mentors for a meeting of all the newspaper editors, and there were several of them there. So and I've been flipping through the pages of it because nobody wants to talk about sex. People want to talk about everything. They will talk about relationship, but everybody was running away. So I just met one of them, and I was like, see, I've gone through your newspaper, you have everything, but there's something that is missing. And he said, what? I said, you don't have any column on sex. I said, yeah, because nobody wants to talk. I said, I can talk about it. So it was like, okay, that I should send like 4 different articles of written on sexuality to him with a passport photograph, which I did, and I just left it there. I was hoping that they will call me, maybe after a month, because I knew the guy was busy. Then the following Saturday, my friend called me, and my friend was like, Prince, I read your column. I said, what column? Because nobody had called me from the newspaper to say, okay, we're going to publish. I didn't know anything. I said, I read your column. And people started calling me because my phone number was like, we read your column, God bless you, this and this and this and this. I said, what column? Then I asked them what newspaper. They told me. I went to the vendor and I saw it beyond my doorstep. I just ran home. I was like, I showed my mom. I said, look at that, and everybody was like, whoa. And then that was how, I started writing. And I've written.
And the lives you have.
I got, surprisingly, when I started writing, I got calls from different people. I got calls from a few pastors. In fact, I became discouraged because a couple of pastors called me to say, why would you be talking about sex? What gave you the courage? This issue is not supposed to be a public issue. Yet, I will get imams call me from Kogi State and the northern part, and they say, God bless you, a young man, we are praying for you. They will say it in their own
I'm sure that was in the beginning, but today...
Yeah, in the beginning, yeah. Yes. And at some point, because I
read one where you are actually counseling pastors who are having problems.
Yeah, I was going to pack it up. I wasn't going to write again. Then I ran to Reverend Sam Adeyemi, and Reverend Sam said to me, he said, Praise, since the problem had been there, what have they done about it?
Exactly.
And he said, Praise, I read your column, so take me as your number 1 fan, and... I'm
number 2.
The moment Reverend Sam said that, I kept writing, and the same people who were condemning me initially, started calling back to say, oh, you're doing a fantastic job, and we've covered different things, from young people to pastors to leaders to celebrities, all kinds of things that and it's touched a lot of,
have you tried to translate it into other languages? Because there are people who can't even read English, but have this problem.
Yeah, we're working on that. Last year I was going to start translating into, but one thing I never do is that I never move before he speaks.
It's true. That's the best way.
Yeah, every time I've done that, you bite the dust. So I have seen it. He has said it, but he has not told me it was time to start doing it. Because let's think about this. Even in the English-speaking pop, we've not even covered.
It's true.
We've not covered. So it's been from every time I hear lots of testimonies. There was a young lady that told me, they said she had promised a boyfriend she was going to lose virginity, on Valentine's Day. Then I wrote, I think, a date to Valentine. No, a date to Christmas. On Christmas Day, I wrote sex at Christmas on the 24th. 25th was that was the day she was supposed to lose her virginity. Then she read my column on the 24th, and she called me to say, Sir, God bless you. And I said, what about your boyfriend? I said, good riddance to bad rubbish. And we've had testimonies like that. A lot of schools, churches have been helped. Now we're implementing sexual education for churches, for schools, and it's been massive. When I look back, now at my pain, it was a setup by God
to bring you to where you are today, and to touch the lives you're touching today.
It was a period of mess, but
today there was a message.
Yeah, it's a message. So I mean, when I see, I tell people every time I've traveled, but I've never paid with my money for a flight before in my life. I've never.
Always inviting.
Yeah, it's always, I've never had to queue up anywhere. And every time I get in my hotel room, the first thing, most times I cry because I'm like, God, I mean, what certificate, what qualification, sometimes I'm addressing ministers' conference.
It's because you'll be.
Yeah, and these were people that I always look up to, and they're like, no, 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 it's your calling. I mean, this is what God has called you to do. And I'm like, every time I'm like, God, so this, I mean, you have this in mind all along. Maybe I should have started this.
No. You started at the right time.
I know. Yeah.
How do you feel today?
Oh, we're not yet there, but I mean, I feel so happy. I mean, there's this fulfillment, that comes every time, I do what I do. To think that the Holy Spirit can teach you a lot of. I mean, I tell people the Holy Spirit is smartest.
The best teacher.
Is the smartest person on
He's
earth.
The best teacher.
I mean, because the things I teach, I've been implementing. In fact, I mean, I got a call from Australia. I mean, a woman said she's been following my column as well online. And
yes.
She said, that we started implementing your sexual education. She mentioned the city Perth. I didn't know where Perth was, and she said Australia.
And you're like, wow.
I was like, Australia? I mean, there are people who place orders for my materials from the UK, from the US. If I go online today, that's why I try not to go on Facebook. I mean, you have like 30, 50 people wanting to ask questions, wanting to get counseled, all this. But these were things the Holy Spirit taught me. When I go for ministrations or to run seminars and sessions and trainings, I mean, I see doctors, I see some professors, and at the end of my session, they're like, praise, what medical school did you go to? I said, I didn't go to any medical school. I said, because the things you're teaching are not even elementary. They teach these things in advance. And I'm like, no.
Hold that thought. Well, 30 minutes is not enough for us to treat this topic. I hope, Praise, you're going to join us so that we continue this topic. Okay. Well, for those of you having sexual problems, sexually abused, and you're keeping quiet, I'm sure if you can reach out to Praise, if you can talk to your mother, to your father, he'll be too glad to respond to you. Well, you will have a great week ahead of you. We'll see you again next week. My name is Uduak Abasi, meaning God's will, perfect will of God.